A little sun over there, huh?
Cloudy over there still?
Yeah, a little cloudy over here.
Well, we're on the same time zone, so the sun is up. It's just hiding.
So you make the sun come up,
Of
right?
course, you know that by now.
Yeah.
How's everything been? I mean, it's been what 2 days since I've seen you, but you called me every hour.
So people don't understand, the real reason that we do this show is I am guaranteed at least 3 hours with my daughter each week. So it was a lot of strategy behind this. So now I know I get FaceTime at least 3 hours a week. So obviously pretty neat. So
It's very intelligent of you.
I know. I've always been very innovative, very creative, and I'll continue to be, right?
Yeah. Well, last show was really fun.
It was.
We got to dive into some cool stuff. I think that we had great questions as well. We almost had to shove so much stuff in this 1 hour at a time. They should have gave us like 3 hours for a show like that.
Right.
Let's see what we got here.
So was that, just tackling that topic, the anxiety, the mental health, and tackling that was really neat. And again, it's one of the things that we can talk about for. Well, he'll probably have to come back to it, But got a lot of good questions, a lot of good information, and it kind of lead us to today's show because we were really kind of talking about the
Pressures.
the pressure, the beginning pressure for athletes, from a younger age all the way through high school and college. And now, with my experience in having a chance to play professional football, there is a lot of the same level of anxiety, a lot of the pressures, and there's some mental illness that is experienced by professional athletes, and I was very fortunate to it was my second year to meet our guest. Our guest is not only a dear friend of mine, but a legendary trainer, Pepper Burris, who came in I think it was my 1977. We have a kindred bond because he was from Indiana, he went to Purdue, and we just really bonded. We ended up having a really good connection with jazz, and we spent a lot of time in my apartment on 135 Post Avenue listening to Wilton Calder and some of the old jazz, and sit back and it's something we continue to talk about today. I don't know if you remember this, but we visited him, you, Bonnie, and myself. I think you were 2 years old. We got a chance to go up and visit him, and so you've grown up since then. But Pepper is a long time legendary trainer for the Green Bay Packers. I cannot name all the Pro Bowl players that he's trained, but you got Brett Favre, you got Aaron Rodgers, Reggie White, but just what an unbelievable career, and it's just kind of close to my heart because we kind of started as pros and professionals about the same time, and I'm just so honored and happy to bring Pepper. I know we only have an hour. We have a lot of topics, and we probably won't get to probably 75% of it because Pepper has a lot of information, and just really so honored to have him on the show. Hey, Pepper, let's bring him on the show.
I can't wait to meet this guy you got coming. Holy smokes!
There he is.
Hey, I'm just going to listen. Where is this guy?
There he is. Hey, I also want to know you are, and I told you before the show, you were the person who named my pads, right? Before you were. Me up, and what did you name my pads?
Well, Faith, I'm going to tell you, your father in this is old school football. A defensive back really likes to grab that ball and maybe dance the other way with it. Shafer would pass up an interception to hit somebody. And I started to call him, he was like thunder and lightning. And he would put pads on his forearms, and we would take a magic marker and write thunder on one and lightning on the other. And as the cliche says, he would bring the wood now. He would bring Shafer, how come you didn't grab that ball? He said, man, I'm going to hit that guy.
No, I understand and believe it all because his forms are lethal. Kids, sometimes when we used to play in the backyard, you get hit by a form just on accident. We're like, oh, man.
Faith, I'm going to tell you, it's my pleasure to be with you after reading your bio and congratulations to not only you, but to Shafer and your late mother. I mean, your accomplishments. I mean, you only played at that little school, Little Hoops. They're not known for hoops or anything, and you played a little school there. And now your brother is going to go to a little school, kind of, known for, little academics and stuff. So very accomplished. I'm very proud to know you guys.
Thank you so much. No, thank you. It means a lot. We're glad you're here, especially. Dad, since you are our professional, if you still remember that you had those days, how about you dive in a little bit more about what Pepper can bring to us today, how we can tap into his brain a little bit on this topic?
Well, we actually talked for about an hour last night, and so we don't have enough time. It's so really nice to have someone who have been able to have visibility through so many decades of professional football and see how it evolved from the pressures and anxiety to dealing with injuries to dealing with mental illness. I mean, just being able to talk. And when you share with me, when we talked about this, got back in the day when you talk about those kind of pressures, specifically the anxiety, we didn't talk about those things, right? So we've kind of evolved to a place where obviously we have a month, the May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's such a big topic. Pepper Bay brings a lot of obviously experience, a lot of awards, and so to begin to really kind of touch, with his knowledge, we won't be able to tip the iceberg. But I think with him, when I asked him to come on, I actually come on last night. He so graciously accepted to come on. I was so excited. We talked yesterday about so much, so we just want to dive into maybe some of our topics.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and we're happy because we might as well dive in right now. Let's do it. The pressures of being a professional athlete. We covered it for youth sports. We covered it for college athletics, which is what I could relate more to. But professionals, one of the things that me and you talked about was making a team, the pressure of getting there, the pressure of walking in the door, that whole pressure. Dad, how can you tell us a little bit about that you've experienced, and then Pepper, maybe things that you have witnessed being around these guys?
Well, it's for me, my own personal experience, and I was a high draft pick. I do remember that first day of practice. I remember after that first day of practice, I looked at my contract to see if how much money I would lose if I leave because it was so tough, right? It was a tough practice. It was a lot different than college. I come to the realization that this is definitely not Kansas anymore. This is really tough. So that pressure in itself, the pressure in college of getting to that point, but now is how do I stay here? How do I maintain? Because every year it was different. Every year they brought in strong safeties. Every year I had to bring it. I had to be, I had to be in shape. I had to be prepared. I had to have the mindset that I needed to make the team every year. Because what goes on in training camp, as people well know, you see guys, the 100 guys come into camp, and every week guys disappear. I mean, just watching that is pressure. Watching grown men, have their lives and have their careers completely stopped abruptly, right? A lot of the guys are prepared. Some of the guys are not prepared. I think the average life expectancy is 3.2 years, and that's real. And because that doesn't really, there's a lot of guys that play 10, 15 years. There's a lot of guys, Pepper will tell you, that come in the first day and they leave. So there is a different kind of pressure. And as I look back on it, I can see that there's even more pressure because you have, the pressure of you're this young kid from Indiana, Elkhart, Indiana, right? Mm-hmm. That was pretty much, my confidence was obviously derived by what I did, how I performed, and all of a sudden I'm in New York, right? That's a whole different world, how I perceive. We go out and you perceive as a professional athlete. I wasn't prepared for that. It took a while. But it's just a different life. And, Pepper can probably, from his perspective, bring a different conversation to it because he saw this over 46 and a half years. Pepper,
42,
right? But, can you shed light on that, Pepper? Because from 1977 when you walked into the Jet camp to last year when you retired, it was so different. Pressure was so different.
Well, even for me, being from upstate New York and ending up with the New York Jets directly out of college, I all of a sudden became somebody that I wasn't the day before.
Right.
I became somebody because I was working for the Jets and people were asking me to do things. Can I get them tickets? Can I get them an autograph? Just stuff that this kid wasn't the day before. I got asked to public speak. I got asked to do this and that.
Mhm.
And so what I'm leading to is all of a sudden you begin to develop an identity. And if someone threatens to take that identity away from you, there's pressure there. And, you know, we keep thinking about professional athletes are going to lose their salary. But I've seen where guys, they get their apartment and they get their car shipped in and they get told the next day or whenever they've been released.
Mhm.
And you're thinking, okay, well, you know, he's going to get a job somewhere else. But just all of that other stuff, if he doesn't have peeps taking care of him, what do I do with my car? What do I do with this? What do I do with that? And my luggage, and who's going to pack this? And then you get claimed by another team. And you got to be on the plane that afternoon, and all of your stuff is behind you. And you just take and throw all this into the mixing bowl, and you say, if this adds 1% of pressure and this adds 5%, all of a sudden you got 75% of stuff going on you didn't have yesterday.
Right.
And we, fortunately, now in the NFL, each team has people to do that. Director of player development. I say we, I'm gone from the Packers now for almost a full year. They have a full-time team psychologist now, sports psychologist. You've got support staff. And of course, the Players Association has rules and regs. You don't just throw somebody to the curb, but the pressures, the little things. And when I do some public speaking, people say, man, I never thought of that. I never thought of this. I never thought of that. They just say, hey, you hit the remote, and at whatever time on Monday night, it's football.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of days where it's not just football.
Right. No, for sure. And I think that dives into a lot of things is that the whole process of moving on to the next place. I mean, you said NFL stands for not for long. Every opportunity is always temporary. And I think athletes come to terms with that, especially at the professional level. But let's talk first year worries, Dad. I mean, you guys are here, you're constantly competing for these positions. And then also you have to stack on understanding players you're going to play, game time, new scheduling, new routines, a completely different program that you're used to and compared to college, which is not what some people don't think is coddling. Professional sports are often very independent, which how would you say about that kind of, because it is more independent?
Yeah, there's definitely an immediate level of accountability there because you can have one bad practice, not necessarily because of physical mistakes, but because of mental mistakes. If you don't grasp the concept really quick, you know, a lot of guys come from colleges, especially today, that have pretty sophisticated offenses and defenses. So a lot of it is, you know the plays, you know the concepts, you know the positions, but you add that along with the pressure of being in that environment, right? Pressure of now this is your job, this is your livelihood. There are a lot of guys who are successful take a level of responsibility because if you don't, you won't last very long.
Right.
I think for me, intuitively, instinctively, it was something I took pride in. And even younger guys who came in the league, you know, you see them struggling with it. You take them aside and say, listen, you know, you need to spend more time in that playbook. Because we had a big playbook. We had the big playbooks, and you really needed to know that playbook. And because if you didn't, you know, again, I mean, there wasn't too many things, especially doing those preseason games where they had to get to a certain cut. You know, every week they had to get to a certain cut. There's a lot of variables that coaches looked at, teams look at, and said, well, should I cut this guy over this guy? A lot of them were just their inability to grasp and make the adapt to this new environment, because you go from, like Pepper said, you go from this young kid to a grown man, right? I mean, you're responsible. This is a job, full-time job, and if you don't, you can find yourself without a job or somewhere else.
Right. Well, Pepper, what type of anxiety, since the one thing I tell people all the time is the most people, the time you spend with people is normally the athletic training staff, and you see them every morning and you see them every night, and that's kind of people we used to see all the time at the NCAA level. What type of anxiety do you see with these kids walking through the doors, especially during preseason, that time when everybody's kind of walking on a bubble?
It's all across the board, Faith. I mean, you've got kids who walk in and their chest is out and they're in control. You've got kids from Big Junction who don't know where to get a towel, and can they take a Gatorade out of that cooler? Sir, can I have one of those? Are they free? I mean, it's all across the board. But interesting, as I see on the scroll that May is Mental Health Week, one thing Shafer may attest to is that athletes' prime resource is their talent and skills and reaction time and speed. And there's a mental component, obviously, too. And I think when you get, as each of those levels increase from Pop Warner High School on up the board to the pros, that mental part of the pie-shaped curve becomes bigger. The mental component, you'll say, this guy could run a 4.3, this guy can do this, he can do that, blah, blah, blah. How come he didn't make it in the pros? Because Shafer used the word, he can't grasp the playbook, or the computer now. The playbook's gone, because you lose the playbook, someone has it. You lose the computer, they just nuke it. So it's all good. But and they don't have to waste paper, on and on and on. But the long and short of it is, Shafe, you may attest to it. How much bigger does that piece of pie get mentally? Not only the playbook, but now you got a zillion staff. You don't have a personal advisor. Of course, you got an agent. You got people hanging on. You got your posse. And that mental part, I actually think, explodes with the next step.
Right.
That's a huge point. It is, as you get further into it, it's huge. I mean, it's the difference maker, right? Of course, that transitions into the real world too. How guys adapt from when they stop playing into the real world. Their ability to make that transition is all mental, right? So no, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Let me digress a little bit to tell you that one of the things that I think that sports medicine has done in professional sports all the way through the line is that we make medical healthcare seamless. And all of a sudden, when you get to be an adult and all of a sudden an EOB shows up, a copay, a whatever, and what do I do with this? And I would end up with some bill. I'm gonna make it up for Shafer Suggs, and I'm looking at it, and it's for, I'm making a joke here, Faith Suggs, and I'm looking at age 2. I'm like, wait a minute, hey Shafe, this isn't my bill. I mean, you're a parent now. You got to pay. I got to pay that. I've got to pay that, really? And you're like, yeah, why'd they send it to me? I mean, so the whole becoming an adult, as you say, there's words in the pro athletes world that they don't know: deductible, copay. I mean, just on and on and on. And,
right.
And we're guilty of making that seamless. We should be corrected for that.
And it's funny because this was my first year out of having I always say our athletic trainer took care of everything. So she was like, she had a magic wand, and she magic wand over everything. And I remember the first time I went for my first checkup, like when I moved to a new city, and she was like, well, the copay is $50. And I said, what is a copay? I thought you just hand the card over, like, you know what I mean? Or a schedule ahead of time. You guys already have my information in the system. Like, I'm very confused here. So that was one of the biggest things for me. I know that for many athlete friends I know, that's the thing. They're like, yeah, I just don't even go to the doctor anymore because it's just like Summer, our athletic trainer, Summer doesn't schedule it anymore, so I don't feel like I need to go, and it just cracks me up because it's like a completely different world and it happens like that. But here, let's dive into injuries because I think this is a great topic, and that's one of really the biggest pressures of professional sport because your body is your job, it's your vehicle. And obviously, I have one question here since we're going to start from college to pros is going in new, the kids who have injuries from college, how does that affect them going in? Do a lot of them hide it? Um, Fear of getting cut, going through training camp and all that stuff. Because in college you get to sit out and heal it, and you have a little more leeway because you have signed your dotted line and you have time. But in college you don't have time. So what is the mental area of those who come in from college with injuries? Do they tell you beforehand, or they keep it inside and internalize it normally until it comes out later on?
It's me or you, Shafe.
Oh, I think you should touch on this.
Faith, the National Football League has the premier pre-draft scouting combine in all of sports.
Right.
And not only your generation, but also your expertise with all of your social media understanding is that, yes, would athletes try to hide history? Yes, they would. And they have advisors, whether they become an agent or not, that tells them, don't ask, don't tell, or don't tell even if asked, or whatever you could say. But now with this world of social media, oh my goodness gracious, the stuff that can be discovered about a high school athlete back, missed this time, did this, did that. But for the most part, it's kind of don't tell unless asked, because I've always used the unkind way of you're going out to buy a used car and you love it. You love the color, you like the name and all that. But dad starts looking at the brake pedal to see how much wear's on it. And he looks and he sees there's a little crink under the fender and on and on. And then he gets one of those fax reports and on, and all of a sudden, honey, I don't think this car's for you. And it's a very unkind way of saying the research into deciding if you're going to buy a pro athlete. And it's a crazy, crazy business because your body is your temple, and people don't take care of that temple too well anymore.
No. Well, Dad, you are the definition of loose brakes in a used car. But most of what people don't know is your injuries are basketball given. But you had many knee injuries coming into Ball State, but also now leaving Ball State and going to the pros. How did that impact you? What was some of the guidance that was given to you? How did it affect you mentally?
Well, my injuries were at a younger age. And I remember when I got my physical with the Jets, I remember the range of my knees were limited because I had one knee injury when I was in the 9th grade, one when I was in the 10th grade. And so, what they did back in those days, and it's like what they did with Joe, they cut you. They just cut you. You put you in the cast. When you take that cast off, your leg is set. So I never did get the full range of my knees back. But I overcompensated for it with other things, like speed, obviously they get a physical, you go through all of the testing, and I tested very well. I ran a 4.45 40-yard dash. In spite, I still had a 40-inch vertical jump. So I still was able to perform at a level that I was desirable, right? But I think in the long run, it probably took maybe 4 or 5 years off my career, those injuries, because I had those injuries at a time where the rehabilitation was not at the level of sophistication that they are now, right? A lot of older guys will tell you that, right? Now, a guy can get a knee injury, can get a ACL tear and come back, better, right? So I think it's the time, the times have changed, and Pepper can attest to that guys can have major injuries and come back really strong. Guys can come out of college. The quarterback out of who was the quarterback who got drafted that had the hip injury? Right, yeah. So they were worried about that injury because he had other injuries, right? But they took a chance on him. There's a lot of level of sophistication, right? that whether or not they're going to buy that car, right? But it's very, very different today than it was when I played because these kids can get hurt and they can come back full speed with the way that the rehab is right
Well, I mean, and that, yeah, as you were talking, this kind of came to my head was there a fear walking into it? I mean, was there a greater fear back then and anxiety towards becoming injured in those days compared to kids now? I mean, obviously it's a big fear to hurt yourself, but back then, what was the fear? I mean, was it more life or death? Did it take a toll on you guys?
I don't know if I call it that fear because you got to be fearless to play this game. And you're not fearless to play that game. You're not at that level.
Right.
You're not at the college level, right? It's almost like you have that schizophrenic. I mean, you go between plays, right? You come back and you hit somebody, come back, and you go, oh my God, I just knocked this guy out. I mean, I was that kind of player. But Pepper, I'll tell you, you have to be fearless to play that game, right? But, as you get older, a lot of the older players, we're all 66, 65, 67 years old, the wear and tear that it's had on our bodies is very, very obvious. But I don't think it's a fear. I think it's just because of the kind of game it is. I think it's pretty clear. Do you agree, Pepper?
Well, Faith, this thing about fear, some of it's healthy because it keeps you sharp, but in a sense that there are so many levels to that. When Shafer played, we didn't have an MRI, we didn't have an arthroscope, we didn't have the ability to immediately find out how bad a particular knee injury was and find out there was a severe bone contusion that you had to be off for 8 weeks because it's basically a fracture. And not only you're like, oh my goodness, it's like, wait a minute, that cat that's been sitting behind me is going to start playing my position. If they start, and that old thing of, hey, you got one foot on a banana peel and one foot out the door. So there's multiple levels to that fear. And today, advanced diagnostics of how bad an injury could either be for you or against you. Hey, we looked at your neck. You don't have any pain down your arms. We looked at this and that, but we're not going to let you play anymore. And all of a sudden, right then and there, your career is over. You're like, wait a minute, I'm fine.
Yeah.
No, you're not fine. And you call it fear, but there's a healthy respect to the fact that my job that I love and want, and people hang out with me, and we make lots of money, and in an instant it can be gone. Now it can happen to you and I driving down the road too, but that is the fact of the matter is that, and I mentioned, Faith, and I'm not going to open a can of worms, but I told Shafer that an awful lot of these contracts these days with pro football players have a per game incentive built into it, legal, on and on, but let's just pick a number, $50,000 a week. Now, it's part of your salary, but if you don't suit up for that game, you're inactive. You don't get that 50 or that hundo or whatever it is.
Right.
And Faith, now you're the wife, and you come home and say, honey, I know your whatever's bothering you, but they're not going to let me play for 3 weeks. You're like, what? Mm-hmm. That's $300,000. There's take that pie-shaped curve and you put the little things on it to say finances, respect, social media, my friends. Oh, I bought tickets. Faith and Shafer flying in for the game, and we got them seats in a hotel, and I'm not going to play. Oh no, I'm on the cover of next week's program, and I'm not going to play. There's a zillion little pebbles we can throw into the pond that keep making little splashes, and one day it's a big splash, and oh boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sure, and I think you just touched on something that we talked about yesterday when we were reflecting on this, is the off-the-court stuff that is so dramatically influenced by the stuff that happens on the field or the court. And when these kids can't play, or they're supposed to be sitting for about 6 games, right? and they're losing money, but also they have outside forces. And these outside voices are talking, and that's a lot of pressure. I mean, Dad, can you think about it? Like friends, I mean, that's your community.
Yeah. So uh, Pepper shared with me last night something that was just so profound when he talked about um, the relationship. Some of these guys, and Pepper, you want to probably tell this story because it was just with even me. I didn't realize because I didn't have a wife, right? But they get used to a certain lifestyle, right, early on, and their two kids come out of college, and they get used to so you're at a point right now. You're 5 or 6 years into the league, and you kind of see when we talk about that fear, you kind of see the writing on the wall. You've had a couple of injuries, you're not playing as much. You have a certain kind of lifestyle, but guess who else has a certain kind of lifestyle, right? And then that pressure of saying, maybe I should think about uh, retiring, but you have someone else on the other side thinking, no, I'm not ready to do that. So I don't care, Pepper, you share that with me because you probably have seen that a lot more because I was a single guy. So I had the pressure of my family and all the things that you just talked about, but just having a spouse that is going through this and that kind of pressure that is sort of clandestine type pressure that you don't really see from the outside looking in.
The stories could be endless, Shafer, and then we'll put it. We didn't talk about this last night, and we joke about everybody's got their gang, their posse, whatever you want to do, but let's forget about that pressure. Let's think about Mom and Graham that you're now helping out. And wait a minute, Mom, you've got a disabled, a handicapped brother or sister at home, and you're taking care of A, B, and C with that, and all of a sudden that economic flow is going to stop, and there's very righteous reasons to have like pressure. Oh my goodness gracious, what about, we were talking a little bit about, well, we belong to the country club and we got the Benz, and now we got to move back to Elkhart, and we're going to lose this and move that. Faith, when Shafe was in Elkhart, there's one newspaper. You moved to New York and there's six. And that's what, Faith, you have a whole different world of social media where in a nanosecond, the world can be pounded on you. We just got up in the morning and we looked at Newsday and the Daily News. We didn't look at the Post. That's where you got slammed. But, and if it was a bad story, you went and bought them all and threw them in the garbage. But Faith, you guys, this generation, there's a whole nother level to that onion. We peel away some levels of that onion, but now I can't imagine. I mean, I looked at the picture, said, "Wait, where'd you get those pictures of me?" You can find stuff you're not supposed to find. So there's pressure. My goodness gracious. I wish we had the whiteboard and we were sitting there and we had the big circle and we kept putting the lines out to the side and said, "Man, I didn't think of that. Oh, I didn't think of that."
Yeah.
Oh boy, oh boy. So
yeah.
That's one of the biggest changes. I mean, and now that I think about it, technology advancing. When you watch The Last Dance, which one of the biggest critiques of the whole experience is could Michael Jordan have existed with social media, with more eyes, with more opinions being said? Because obviously he was slammed constantly. That forced him to retire the first time. That a lot of people don't understand is these athletes wake up or they leave the arena and they pull their phones out and immediately go to Twitter, and you can type your name in and see every single comment a fan, a critic, a writer, anybody says about you. And not a lot of them are positive. I mean, if you had a bad game or someone considered you, who was fan 258, who thinks they watch every single game, thinks that you played terribly, now you're thinking, wow, I played terribly. I already knew I played terribly, but now everyone's seeing it. It's a lot different at that level. I mean, college is starting to tap onto it more and more. These kids have a lot more pressure as well because they're becoming more professional stages. But that's a lot of pressure and a lot of negativity to take in constantly. I mean, Dad.
Faith, you're correct. You are correct that we've said that the real old school of athletes before Shafer and I were involved said they could never do A, B, and C, computers, playbooks. We watched Shafer's there when we went from film to video. I'm like, oh no, it never exists. And now it's all digital and on and on and on. The eye in the sky was maybe the camera didn't catch me. Well, there's 20 cameras. They all catch you now.
Right.
But the crazy thing with social media is that you would certainly know that, hey, I lost some money on the game. I'm a nobody. But I put down the fact that, hey, I saw Shafer at the bar last night at 3 o'clock in the morning and he was stoned to the bejeebers. It's no more true than the man in the moon. But
it's out there.
It's out there, and then it's out there. And if it's on the internet, it's got to be true.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, the stuff that this generation and I think where you're going to go with this is we have to have coping factors. You've got to have an inner circle, people you can. Back in the day when Shafer and I were around, you didn't talk mental health. You didn't talk intimacy and stuff. That was for softies.
Mm-hmm.
And now you got a man hug and you got somebody you can sit with and like, let's be real. Let's talk it out. And Faith, you said nicely, it's in the athletic training room, but a lot of times athletes don't want to bring it in the building because if it gets in the building has ears.
Mm-hmm.
So you need somebody outside. A lot of times it's your pastor, your chaplain, your friends, your bestie, whoever it is. But I think the thing that's critical about what you guys are doing with your show is that you've got to remind people they need to have outlets. This stuff has to be, you can't internalize this pressure, whether it's money, car, country club, this bad comment. You got to have peeps. You got to have somebody you can be intimate with and you can talk with.
Right.
And that's the topic of vulnerability, and that we touch on often. But me and my dad were talking about this, and vulnerability is hard for people who inherit millions of dollars because you always are questioning and thinking, do people have ulterior motives? Who can I trust? Who can be in my circle? And a lot of these athletes, even though the people they allow in their circle that they have known for years, often hurt them or often sell some story. I mean, Dad, can you touch on that a little bit? Because
I get overwhelmed by experiencing this. I get overwhelmed by watching other guys experience it, and I get even more overwhelmed by how today's kids are having to navigate through. Because I don't know. I mean, I would be afraid to look at the daily news, if I missed a tackle or something like that. I get overwhelmed by it. But the one thing that I must say that I'll mention is that Pepper has faith, and it's something that we had with the New York Jets, which kind of a lot of guys tap into their faith in God, and that was a good foundation that we had, which has been our connection, our relationship for all these many years. But Faith, I just am so happy that we are bringing awareness because there's an outlet. We talked about on your show on Wednesday with actually on Monday, your experience with mental health, mental illness, and how they still need to evolve. The NCAA needs to evolve. Schools need to evolve because it's definitely something that is necessary. Whereas as we continue up this path, right? Because I was listening to, from 1977 to 2000 to 2020, and the difference in the pressures. I mean, I just don't know. I'm thinking about my pressure. You were talking about my fears. I'm trying to figure out how I would actually navigate through this today. It would be without having. See, a lot of us kids come with no dad, right? We come with that third party that don't necessarily have our best interests. Okay, we have a mom that don't really know what's going on, right? We just are clueless about how to navigate this, and I'm just really happy. And Pepper shared this with you that they're beginning to have the resources, to beginning to have the awareness to really have an outlet and tools for these kids to help them heal from it, because it can be overwhelming.
Right.
With Faith, the NFL, the Players Association, the NFL have major initiatives in the last couple of years for mental health. The Packers just hired their first full-time team psychologist, and then you're bound by medical confidentiality. Someone's not just running upstairs to say, "Hey, Faith has got this. Faith is struggling with that," and of course, as athletic trainers, we have, air quotes, a Hippocratic oath as well. But there's a trust and a bond, and so many times it's been a nurse that someone gets close to, a pastor that someone gets close to. But it's important that you let your listeners know that it's okay to be vulnerable, but in the same respect, you've got to let it out. You can't internalize it. A man left to his own is in his own worst company. Yeah. Somewhere. I don't know if that says that in the Bible shape, but something close to that.
Yeah.
So left alone, he's in his own worst company.
Yeah. And even worse now because a lot of people left alone are on their phones. Yeah. And that right now I see is the worst place, because as a young adult, I'm 23, the first thing I do in the morning is how I check my news, how I check everything is I scroll to social media, social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's all run by opinion, okay? And when you're by yourself, and especially during a time like this, it's hard not to see and compare and get competitive with things that are around you, especially as athletes. But one thing as you two were talking that kind of dawned on me is the way the NFL works is very few, or maybe more than few, get to stay within one program their entire career. Moving around, and after a while, a lot of the guys that get to 6, 7 teams, I mean, they're not forming personal relationships. This is their job. That they walk in and they walk out the door. What type of mistrust, or maybe what kind of feelings go on? Dad, you can shoot this one off, but I mean, what kind of? I know you've seen it, and I have friends who play at the professional level who have that type of mindset. How does that work among these guys?
Well, it's interesting that when I go back to a lot of the Jet reunion, the larger portion of the guys who are there are the guys who played between like 76 and 83. Because at that time, free agency wasn't a big thing, wasn't even exist. So guys were used to staying with the team 2, 3, 4 years. So you were able to build that bond. Now it's different, right? I think guys are now, the money that they're making, I think you just don't get that bond. Because they're going to go to the next team. Who's going to pay them the most? It's a different culture today than it was when I. So you're not going to see guys play on an average. You're not going to see guys play 10, 12, 13 years on the same team. What's your feelings on that, Pepper? I mean, you have visibility to it. You see the guys come and go.
Well, you're right. There was no free agency back in the day. And now a lot of times free agency involves big dollars, so they're not totally opposed to it. But one thing Faith touched on is that some guys are cut out for certain environments and others aren't. I'm still a dear friend of Brett Favre, and it's ironic that he almost was a New York Jet coming out of the draft. But people, his story's been publicized, but a lot of people don't know that. Came to Green Bay, this country boy from Mississippi, blossomed in Green Bay. I think if brought to New York City out of the country right away, that city's taken a lot of fine people to its knees because of the pressures of the big city. So, and when Faith says free agency and moving around, one thing we do as athletic trainers is if Shafer came into me, shake his hand, be part of his physical, but know some things about him and say, hey, your former athletic trainer at Ball State is a buddy of mine, or hey, I saw that you went to school here and that, and you just try to pick on a couple things to get this little bit of a bond of something. Hey, I hear you go to chapel. Hey, we got a great Bible study. Or what you need to try to quickly grasp something to say, hey, we're not going to be boys at the get-go, but maybe there's something there.
Connection.
And, when you see that guy sitting all alone in the corner of the locker room, you say, what's up? And it's I keep talking about that big pie-shaped thing and the chunks and pieces and the layers on an onion that you guys are tapping into it, but there's so many layers to it that and I don't want to say it's not the same at the mill where someone's doing this. If I lose my job, and pro athletes, they always think they can get another job another place. I'm going to get a chance. But with this crazy world we're in right now with the pandemic and people like businesses, I read they're closing and the pressures. And I mean, the mental outcome of this time we're in right now is going to be interesting. I mean, we're going to have some dents and dings that we didn't have going in, put it that way.
Right.
Especially that. I mean, when we come, let's bring it back to injury a little bit. That when it comes to injury, and one of the things that I was talking to my dad about, because even now, when it comes to how these kids deal with the pain of injury, I remember when I was at Duke and I had my injuries, we were prescribed certain things, and sometimes I'm big on like the anti-drug that they give, and I know a lot of teammates are. As someone who is in that medical area, you can touch on this as much as you can. How do the prescription drugs impact these kids? You see some kids come into the prescription drug with more education. I mean, what type of education is handled to make sure these kids handle it carefully?
Well, it's a whole nother subject. The NFL has gone through major changes in the last couple of years where the team basically stocks nothing else. You go directly to the pharmacy, and just like your mom or dad or someone, you're given a patient educational pamphlet. The doctor tells you what to do. But the dilemma we've come to understand is that some athletes don't like to take medications. Faith, the biggest medication, the biggest expense that we have in pro sports for medication is for antibiotics and medical care. The smallest portion is for anything that's analgesic. Now, if we talk about anti-inflammatories, a lot of people tend to think that they're painkillers. Well, they reduce pain by reducing anti-inflammation, but they're not painkillers. And there's a lot of cliches out there. If someone were to get in a flu shot, you'd hear, oh, they shot me up. They shot me up. Oh, I got my knee shot up. And we went through a generation of where the Toradol was out there and that the medication they give people. And it's a huge learning curve. And you got to realize that your doctors are ethical. Now there's all stories left and right on the story, but we hear too many stories. We've had players get in trouble when another player takes care of a player in the next locker with something that he was given for his wisdom teeth, and he gave it to Shafer, and Shafer happened to come up for a random test, and all of a sudden he's got something. What do you mean? I've got nothing. Oh no. Billy gave me that one, and just there's so many layers and stories. I don't want to go off on the edge, but it's incumbent on the medical staff and the doctor to explain what the medications are, what the interactions are. The NFL and the PA, the Player Association, you can call in and say, can I take this? What about this list?
Right.
Banned substances, the things that used to say that you're responsible for what you put in your body. You go to a local little store in the mall, and some kid who's 17 and a half years old says that, hey, this really pretty bottle does A, B, and C. And you don't know what facility that was made in the back room at whatever place. And I don't want to go there. It's a mess. But Faith, to the end of bringing it back to the circle of your show, is that's another layer of pressure that athletes have. Like, can I take this? Do I take this? Do I finish this? And then they go home and their buddy's saying, let's go out and have a cocktail. And they've taken this whatever medication and a cocktail, and now the police stop them because you're going a little over the center line. We got a whole nother pressure going down.
Right.
Dad, I mean, has things changed? What was it like in the 70s, 80s?
Well, it's different. Education is key. It was for me, having not having that much visibility because I didn't, other than pain medicine. You take what you need, but it's very different. A lot of it's just having awareness of it, right? We talk about way back in the day when guys got shot up, this and that. It's a lot different. It's a different world. I mean, there's more liability out there. For teens, kids, as what Pepper just said. There's so many different dynamics and variables that can get yourself in a situation where you're compromised. So I think we still have a way to go to making sure that the kids have visibility to making sure that they are taking care of themselves.
Okay, and on the topic of taking care of themselves, obviously, let's dive into a little more just to educate people who are watching on the resources provided for these athletes.
Mhm.
What is the biggest change and difference in resources from Dad? How long was it? 40 years ago.
Just a couple years ago, maybe.
This time and then now.
1976 to now, right?
You had just finished.
Right.
Hey, I feel like you just took the. What's the biggest resource?
Yeah. Well, what is the biggest change?
We are on it. The biggest change right now is we're on it. Technology, and you've got everybody who says, "Hey, I read on the internet that this pain in my shoulder can be this or this medication. Look at this crazy virus thing we're dealing with now."
Right.
If we had no, to be funny here, no mass media,
Right.
would we be as crazy as we are right now? What's going on? We'd be uninformed, but you've got so much stuff left and right. So the biggest change is technology and computer information. And to the end where you stepped into the mud puddle about medications and the like, all of this stuff is tracked electronically. We do not even keep an inventory anymore. It's all in the electronic medical record. And if you take that prescription from the neighbor who happened to slide it across the fence to you, your tooth is bothering you, right? And you go to the pharmacy and you want a little bit of X, Y, and Z, and the pharmacy types it in and it says, eh.
Yeah.
You can't get that. You just had that filled down the street. What? I'm being a little sarcastic, a little superficial, but the technology can be good and bad, but for the most part, we know we love it. Technology is a huge resource, huge.
No, that's a new one. Dad, we didn't even hear that. Or Dad, what would you think is the biggest change?
That is that was profound.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're broadcasting the number of cases each day. I mean, we're not doing that with cancer. We're not doing that with heart disease. We're not doing that with all the other, things that people are dying of, right? I mean, so it's bringing media attention is really bringing a level of some kind of paranoia. But
And that's a great point. I mean, we sit around and I remember when the pandemic was kind of unveiling, we all were trying to figure out the facts and the symptoms, and all you had to do was Google, and that can be dangerous because Google can be a long journey down a dark path or a good path, but it was very helpful. Pepper, and for those who kind of want a more inside look at mental health and professional athletes, what would you say is the training and education? Because I know that you speak on a lot of this that is provided for athletic trainers at these levels. Well, I mean, what is the workshop, stuff like that?
Well, Faith, you know that, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, that a lot of people have trainers, allow my air quotes, trainers, but then they have athletic trainers. We are nationally certified, state licensed. We have continuing education units we have to stay and all of these requirements. And so the NFL provides workshops. We have our National Athletic Trainers Association. The rabbit hole I'm talking about is you go to the gym and they say that, hey, my trainer told me blah, 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 or my trainer said I should do that. I said, tell me about your trainer. Are they medical people? If I have the big one right now, the heart attack, Do I want my personal trainer figuring out how to do that CPR, or someone who's professionally certified with emergency medicine? On and on and on. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole. The point is that today's sports medicine staffs, physical therapists, athletic trainers, have got layer after layer of continuing education and requirements to stay up on it. When Shafer and I first started, I mean, you talked about a little bit with medication, or we'll talk about the old school before us. They talked about the cookie jar. You took amphetamines to get up for the game. You took downers to get down for the game. And you're saying, oh, you can't say that. You read any magazine, any book there is, it's all about it. And then you came into our world where we had to have prescription logs and things, but we didn't know about this anti-inflammatory doing this and the other rabbit hole or concussions and blah, blah, blah. Well, now with this technology, we're into a whole nother world. Electronic medical records, interactive records, alarms, etc. Nope, you can't take this with that. So we can poo-poo technology. I love it. I love the fact that we can do this, that got to embrace it, but you also have to be discriminatory about what you listen to. And the one thing you said about Michael Jordan in the comments and stuff, hey, they told me never, ever read the comments.
Yep, ever. But Pepper, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you gave some great insight on this topic. I hope people really gravitated towards it. I hope you can have you eventually another time, maybe with a new topic. But Jordan, thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday.
Well, Faith, your daddy's so proud of you and your brother. But I'm going to tell you what, that Shafer and I, as the cliches goes, we's brothers from a whole nother mother. And, I love them, and thank you for including me, and I'm only a phone call away.
All right. Thank you, Pepper.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this wonderful Wednesday morning at 903 Live. We hope today was good for somebody out there. Share it, stream it. We would love to help someone else. Sports can bring a lot of pressure, so join us in this journey. We want to thank our stream platforms, Amazon Fire, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and of course, out of the beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, our host station E360 TV. We'll be back on Friday with a new fun topic. We're going to break down what it's like to be a senior in today's society. We'll bring on a very special guest. We won't tell you guys who it is, but these kids missed out on memories, and we have taken that for granted. So let's hear about how they made it work anyways. Thanks, guys. And we are Faith Family Focus, where we want to use our faith as a vehicle to help heal and sustain others on their path to strengthening the family core. Have a great Wednesday.
See you Friday.